Great. Well, yeah, as I said, what we want to do is share some of the findings of a review that we carried out, and also some of the work that we're doing, trying to put some of the ideas from the review into practice. So Rachel and I are going to jointly do a short presentation, and then we hope there'll be plenty of time for people to give us their thoughts, their comments, their ideas, and any questions that you might have. And just by way of, I suppose, a formal introduction, so my name is Claire Turner. I'm the Director of Evidence at the Centre for Ageing Better, but I'm also the Director with responsibility for the area of work that this programme sits under. Rachel, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. I'm Rachel Monaghan, as Claire has said, and Ellie. I'm Programme Manager for Age Friendly and Inclusive Volunteering. And I am managing the grant programme that we're running, and I'll be able to tell you a bit more about that later.
Great. So I'll kick off then. So what I want to do is provide a kind of overview of some of the review findings, and also introduce you, I suppose, to a set of principles that we've developed, age-friendly and inclusive principles on the back of that review. And then Rachel will talk more about how we're trying to put these into practice. So just a bit of an overview of what we did. So the review, the Community Contributions Review, was a partnership between the Centre for Ageing Better and the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. And really we wanted to focus on, how do you enable more people at 50 plus to contribute their skills, their time, their talent, their knowledge to their communities in later life. And we really wanted to focus on how you increase participation amongst those kind of underrepresented groups. And a lot of work went into the review. So we looked at the existing evidence on the benefits of community contributions. We had over 200 responses to our call for evidence, over 30 to our call for practice. We did a number of roundtables. We did focus groups with people in later life. And we also did some research in 4 communities in England to understand a bit more about how people make informal contributions. And we really did, as part of this review, want to look, I suppose, at the spectrum of community contributions, from the very informal, neighbourliness, kindness, people helping out friends and neighbours, to more of those kind of formal volunteering that people might do for say, charities. So just a word on, I suppose, the benefits of making a contribution in later life. So when we looked at the evidence, some really great evidence on the benefits to individuals for making contributions like volunteering. So we know that that can be really beneficial for people's friendships and relationships, helping people increase the kind of quantity and quality of their social connections, give people a sense of meaning and purpose in their lives, and also can help improve happiness and well-being and life satisfaction. There's not always conclusive evidence in other areas. We know that it doesn't protect, say, for example, against frailty in later life. And also there's a kind of complex relationship between kind of health and volunteering, that we're not certain that volunteering does improve your health, because we also know that healthier people are more likely to volunteer. The same with the relationship between volunteering and employment. It might be that some people do use volunteering as a route to employment, but I think we don't know enough about that really in terms of seeing it as a route to employment, particularly for people in later life. So when thinking about who makes a contribution, I suppose we know that by the time people reach later life, most people have experience of contributing to their community. So the idea that age is the most significant determinant of making a contribution isn't truly. We know, that people often make contributions. People are more likely to make a contribution in later life if they're made a contribution throughout their lives. And I suppose what we're concerned about is that when we look to the future, there's kind of no room for complacency about this. We know the older population is changing. It's already more ethnic diverse. People are living longer, but often with long-term conditions and caring responsibilities. So the kind of civic core that perhaps we've relied on for a long time, of those people who are mainly healthier, wealthier and white, this group may not be able to sustain its contributions in the future, particularly where people are working longer and caring for longer. So through this review, I suppose we wanted to highlight, it's really important for us to take action to attract and retain a more diverse pool of volunteers. Otherwise, I think there's a real risk that organisations who use volunteers will find their capacity depleted, and obviously communities will be missing out on the kind of talents that people can bring. So one of the things that we do know and we understand through the review and the wider research that's out there is that as people move through life, they can face a number of barriers to getting involved in volunteering or other activities in their communities. Some of these might be around poverty, people experiencing poverty or ill health. We know that people from Black and minority ethnic groups are very underrepresented in formal volunteering. And we know also that, people in later life can find that those changes, so whether that's ill health or disability or bereavement, can cause them to withdraw from making a contribution. And the review itself identified 3 broad categories of barriers, as illustrated in the slide. So the kind of practical barriers like cost or transport, the sort of structural barriers that might be about the kind of inflexibility of volunteering offers or the lack of neutral spaces, or those kind of emotional barriers. And particularly we found some of these things to be very strong for people in later life, particularly around this kind of stigma and stereotyping and ageism, and also perhaps this lack of confidence or fear of overcommitment. And you'll see, few of these barriers are very specific to people in later life, but some are linked to age and the kind of life transitions that are associated with aging. And what we also know from what we found through the review is that, older people themselves don't want to be singled out. They don't want a kind of special older people's volunteering program. So we need to think more carefully about that and to think that actually the response that's needed to some of these challenges is to ensure that opportunities are age friendly rather than age specific, and that they are inclusive to help us think about some of those barriers that are perhaps, again, not necessarily always associated with age. So before I hand over to Rachel, I just wanted to talk a bit about, so the review report itself, which I'd really encourage people to take a look at, made a series of practical recommendations for those organisations who have a stake in really helping to increase the pool of volunteers that we have. But what the review also did was, I suppose, to try and create a framework. And this is this set of 6 age-friendly inclusive volunteering principles that I suppose might act as a bit of a reminder for us all to consider whether we're really doing as much as we can to make the volunteering opportunities that we offer to people age-friendly and inclusive. So just a brief kind of scan through those principles. So the first is about being flexible and responsive. So again, I think this is very relevant to the comment I made earlier, I suppose, about, that people can experience a number of changes and transitions in later life, and the ability to be able to adjust to their commitment without feeling you've let somebody down, or perhaps be able to stop being involved for a while and then rejoin, really important to people. So the flexibility of opportunity for people in later life is something that would really, I think, help people be able to continue to be involved in the way that they would like to. In terms of the next principle about being enabled and supported, again, some of these things about the kind of practical help that people might need around expenses or access or training, and also that people feel supported and they know where to turn to when they have any questions. Sociable and connected, that links very much back to the evidence that we uncovered about the importance of the role of volunteering and making contributions in it, helping people to maintain and develop social connections, the stuff that's important to all of us in life. So the opportunity, as well as to take part in activities, but to spend time with people, meet people, feel part of something, a sense of belonging. The fourth principle around feeling valued and appreciated. So again, this idea that would be common to all of us, that feeling like your effort has been recognised, and that can be in small ways like thank yous or tokens of appreciation. and for people to feel like they're appreciated for the contribution that they're making. Meaningful and purposeful, again linking back to some of the evidence about the role that volunteering can have in helping people to have meaning and purpose in their later lives, that people wanting to feel that they're doing something that's purposeful, that they're doing something that's worthwhile. And so examples, I suppose, about giving kind of regular opportunities to give and receive feedback, or for people to be able to shape the work that they're doing. And the final principle, which is around making good use of people's strengths. So again, we know obviously that people in later life have built up, a huge amount of skills and experience and knowledge. And so to have the opportunity to use that, but also to be able to try out and learn new things, and to feel like their kind of experience and what they're bringing is respected and valued. So that's a kind of summary, I suppose, of some of the findings of the review, and the kind of principles that we've developed as a framework that's come out of that. And I'm going to hand over to Rachel now. She's going to talk about our grants programme and how we're trying to put those principles into practice.
Great. Thanks ever so much, Claire. That was really good to hear. And I know you recommended people should look at the review. I just wanted to remind people that this week we've also launched Age-Friendly and Inclusive Volunteering Guide, which is a booklet which in essence is a summary of the review. So it's a really handy, short way of sort of hearing again or reading again what Claire's just been telling us about. So yes, as Claire said, we now have our Age-Friendly and Inclusive Volunteering grant programme, and we were really delighted to be able to launch this earlier this year, so that we can explore more about what came out of the review, and to test some of the framework and look at how some of the barriers can be addressed in the real world. So again, the fund is in partnership with the DCMS, and it was announced in the loneliness strategy. So we have £270,000, which we have been able to give to 5 organisations to work for 12 months. Alongside that, we are also match funding a learning and evaluation strand of work, so that we are supporting the projects to think about what they're doing, to develop models of what they're working on. So each of the projects are stimulating new approaches to age-friendly and inclusive volunteering. They're in different parts of the country and working in really, really different ways. But they're all working to identify good practice, and at the end of the process, there will be the models of what they're doing, and also understanding of the process they've been through to develop their models. And the hope is that there'll be models coming out of that people can learn from, can share, and also can nick ideas from. So it will really help to support people's practice. And it will also really support us develop more learning, to understand more about how people are working in age-friendly and inclusive ways, and how people need support in order to be able to do that. So the grant programme, so that the fund has 3 different priorities, which are all really exploring further the things that came out of the review. So the first of the priorities is to help people who face barriers to taking part and staying involved. So we're looking there to develop tailored support for people in later life who are facing particular barriers that prevent them from taking part and staying involved. And like Claire said, looking at people who might be underrepresented generally in volunteering and community contribution, so people with long-term health conditions, caring responsibilities, and other characteristics that might put them at risk of missing out. Another priority is to help people to sustain lifelong contributions as circumstances change. So that's thinking about ways of developing and managing people to keep their level of commitment up when they're able to support them to drop their level of commitment down as circumstances change for them. And the third priority is to help people to connect to opportunities to suit their circumstances and connect with a wide range of activity. So that's thinking more widely than formal volunteering. I'm thinking about informal, self-organised community activities, acts of neighbourliness, and how people in later life can be supported to move between those different kinds of activities as and when it suits them, to help them to retain their involvement in their community. So I'll very quickly introduce the grantees. I know some of them are with us today, so that's really great. I hope I don't misrepresent you. We're funding 5 different programs. The first is the Good Friends for All project, which is run by Age UK North Craven and others as well in the North Yorkshire area, which is enhancing the age friendliness of a Good Neighbour scheme. So the Good Neighbour scheme has run previously in a more urban area in North Yorkshire. It's now being brought to a rural community, and this project is looking at how to enhance its age friendliness and to support lots of really inspiring Good Neighbour schemes that are already taking place in that area, but to bring them together and to support them to really look at how they can be age friendly. The second one is Late Spring, run by Age UK Oxfordshire, and that's to look at how to extend an already really successful peer support model for bereavement support, how that can be developed to support participants to take part in other activities to support each other to be involved in their community and take up volunteering if that's what they want to do. The next one is Hastings Age Friendly Volunteering, which is run by Hastings Voluntary Action. So in Hastings, they're developing with our funding a 3-pronged model for their community, which involves developing a group of volunteer champions, people who have experience, enthusiasm, want to share that with others, a club for people who are taking a break from volunteering. Their circumstances may have changed, or they may have lost confidence in their ability to contribute, but there's going to be a support mechanism. It might be called a club, it might be called something different, to help them to regain confidence, to re-engage. And they're also going to be providing support to some of the organisations that they already work with to make sure that they are as age-friendly as they can be. Next, there's the project called From Supported to Supporter, run by Kent Coast Volunteering, where they're building on an informal practice that they already have to support the journey of people who receive help from other volunteers to become volunteers themselves. Yesterday, they held their first event as part of Volunteers Week, where some of their long-term participants in a social group that runs weekly actually became the people who were running the group. So that's a really exciting development for them. And last but by no means least is the Growing Connections project, which is run by Sustain, which is the Alliance for Good Food. I hope, Chris, I'm not saying the wrong explanation of your alliance. But the Growing Connections project is for community gardens across London and understanding and sharing age-friendly practices to support recruitment and retention of older volunteers. That's by pairing gardens which have already got a good reputation, a good practice in working with older people who are going to be the flagship gardens, and pairing them with buddy gardens to help to share their practices and to ensure that those practices can then be spread around different gardens across their networks. If you want to see introductions by the project leaders themselves, please do. There's videos that explain what they're doing much better than I can on our YouTube channel, which is there. So hopefully that will give you an idea of what we're doing in terms of trying to bring the ideas of the review to life and to test the framework and the principles. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you, Rachel. I mean, I feel like that, I hope that's given people a kind of flavour of the work that we've been doing, the framework, and how we're trying to put that into practice. But we're really interested in hearing any of your reflections, your thoughts, your questions. I can see by the kind of participants list that we have here that there's lots of people listening in who will have experience or be working with volunteers every day. So it'd be really, really great if people could, by the kind of Q&A bar, send us some comments or questions. We'd be really interested in hearing a bit more about that. And Rachel, who did you say we had some people from the projects listening in who might, again, be really great to hear from?
Yes, I think that we have Ruth from Late Spring in Oxfordshire, and also Simon, who is CEO of Age UK North Yorkshire and Darlington. So I think Chris from Sustain, who we were expecting, hasn't joined us yet. But Simon or Ruth, if you have got anything to say, that would be absolutely brilliant if you can pop it in a comment. We did have one question, Claire, that came in earlier from Sue Dudley from Community Connections. Mm-hmm. So they are provider of door-to-door transport, accessible transport for individuals in Gloucestershire, I should say, sorry. So people who are rurally and socially isolated. Their challenge is they're a non-profit, they've got a very small communications budget, and so they need to be able to share the message, share what they're doing to people, and they have a particular challenge that a lot of the people who they would want to communicate to let know about their service might not be on the internet. I think this is probably a challenge that most people who are signed in today face.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we've also done work more broadly, haven't we, around sort of digital inclusion and thinking about that. But I'm sure maybe people who are listening in might have some ideas about how, how to get messages out in other ways, certainly to support, older people to be more connected. I mean, we're doing some interesting work in Leeds with a network of organisations called the Leeds Neighbourhood Network. So a really interesting model that is citywide, 37 schemes across the city of Leeds, and lots of work there, I think, in terms of people trying to engage with the range of people who come into contact with older people all the time. So actually making really strong links with GP surgeries, even the kind of local shops and cafes, places where people go, and making sure that the kind of information that they have about the services that they deliver are in those kinds of places that people might go, whether that's supermarkets or cafes, on a regular basis. So I'm sure there'll be lots of work up in Leeds in terms of really trying to think carefully and creatively about ways in which you can get messages out that don't always involve people having to be online.
Yeah, no, I'd absolutely agree with that. I know that one of the projects that we're working with, the one in Hastings, they are in the process of doing recruitment for their volunteer champions, and they're thinking about ways of getting information, that they provide information all the time, but how they actually get it out to where people are. And it's exactly like you're saying, it's using all of the networks, all of the contacts you already have, thinking about where people go, where they are meeting, and making sure that the information gets there, and often gets to people who will tell people by word of mouth as well.
Yeah.
I think, word of mouth is, is really important for people, because if it also comes from somebody who you know, somebody you trust, then you're going to listen and take on board what the information, what the message is.
Yeah.
And it might be also, people may not be accessing the internet, but it might be that they won't always not access the internet as well, because there's an opportunity to support older people to get online, to support older people to be using online methods, perhaps when they're in a service or when they are somewhere. So if they're not using it at home, it doesn't mean that they're not going to use it, or that they can't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think people are just enjoying listening to us, Rachel, because we haven't got any questions or comments coming through yet. But I wonder whether there's anything else we could share, I suppose, about. I mean, it's really interesting to see the list of people listening in from different parts of the world. And I certainly think, as you mentioned about the videos that we have, that really do tell the kind of stories of the projects and what they're setting out to do. In a brilliant way, don't they? In terms of much more than a report can ever do. So I would really encourage people again to sort of look at those videos and again to get a kind of more in-depth insight into those. And Rachel, do you want to just, I suppose, remind people of the sort of time frame of the projects, and when we think we might have other things to share that are about the kind of models that people are using?
Yeah, so the project started this April and they're running through to the end of March next year. So we're really asking them to do a lot in a year, in terms of developing a model that they think will work, then testing that model, and then really articulating it in a way that is helpful and useful for other people to use. But the projects are absolutely up for it. They're all working really hard. They're all starting to test things out now, so that it's really exciting to see what people are doing. But there should, by the end of March, sort of beginning of April, May time, I think we will be able to be in a position to, the models will be ready, and in towards the summertime of next year, we'll have more of the kind of academic, perhaps I shouldn't say academic, but the sort of more formal evaluation reports of the work that the projects have been doing will come out as well. So that will be, sort of about this time next year, we'll have those learnings. And I'm sure that they will be, really interesting for us, and will make us think about other things, other areas that we want to look at in more detail.
Absolutely.
Because, the things like we touched on it before, informal contributions, so people helping their neighbours out, supporting people in their community on a very informal basis, is something that we just don't know that much about, do we, Claire?
No, absolutely not. And I think they, a lot what we wanted to cover in the review, didn't we, was the kind of whole spectrum of ways in which people contribute. Because certainly I think there's lots of, it's quite easy, I suppose, I come from a sort of research background, it's quite easy to measure kind of formal volunteering, to see it, to know what it is. And we know a lot, I suppose, about who volunteers in a formal way. We know those people tend to be kind of wealthier and healthier, and why. And so, but we also are starting to know a bit more, but I think there's a lot more that we could learn about those kind of more informal contributions, because we see that they happen across a range of communities, and actually lots of people are doing things to help out their friends and their neighbours that often perhaps goes unnoticed even by them. You know, I think we were talking about the other day about this idea of, well, it's just what people do. Just what I do. You know, people don't put a sort of badge on it or a label on it. And so actually, I think really important for us, I think we're interested in looking at how do you create the conditions for that to just thrive in communities. Okay, well, it looks like we have a sort of a question or a comment from Sue Beaumont. So Sue, you're saying you work for Family Lives. This is very interesting. Thank you very much. Volunteer-based organisation with a wide range of volunteers. We invest in our volunteers to ensure their time with us is enjoyable and beneficial to them. And we do gain a lot of older volunteers through word of mouth. However, I'm interested in understanding the best access to older people who do not have the confidence to volunteer with us. So yes, really important issue that's came through from the review about, well, how do you engage those people that aren't currently involved in their communities? I mean, I think one of the kind of messages from the review was really organisations really trying to widen their link and their networks that they have, because that kind of the idea that actually lots of people do things in their communities on a very informal basis, to help people out, might be part of local community groups, and actually the sort of more formal charities making links with those kind of wider network of community groups or faith organisations, where they perhaps be able to build links with people that perhaps are doing a little bit in their communities but would like to do more. It might again be that kind of stepping stone from doing something small and helping people out to maybe taking a bit of a leap and doing something more in their communities. Rachel, did you have any other thoughts on that in terms of the work of the grantees?
No, I think the idea of helping, supporting people who are getting people with that sense of confidence that they can go to the next step, but then also that not taking the next step is also okay. So sometimes we tend to think of it in a kind of linear way. You might be being supported, and your next stage is that you need to be the supporter. You need to be going forward all the time. But what really came out in the review, I think, is it's important that we provide opportunities for people to do things in the way that they want, and the way that they want might be very different from how sometimes traditional formal volunteering organisations see volunteers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got a couple more. Rachel, do you want to take?
Yes. So there's a comment from Mary McNeil, who says, "Hi, I just wondered if you had included how influential time banking was for the older audience in encouraging them to get involved in their communities." And I think, absolutely. I know that in North Craven, where one of our projects is working, Settle TimeBank is one of the key partners in the work there. So I think you're absolutely right. It's a way of helping people to feel involved, and to understand what they're doing and what they're potentially getting back as well.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we've got another question and response from Sharon Tynan, I think that is. So Sharon says, in the Healing the Generational Divide report recently, it was stated that one idea was to create a new flagship national volunteering scheme that encourages older people to volunteer in their communities when they retire. Do we think this is a good idea? The national experience course was not successful, surely. The existing volunteer involving infrastructure is very successful at engaging marginalised people. Many older people do not like it when services are age specific, and this doesn't encourage bringing the generations together. Yes, I mean, I think as we I said in my part of the presentation, Sharon, that actually, you know, our feedback from older people was very much that the idea of a special older people's volunteering scheme wasn't very appealing to them either. And I think, again, I suppose, as Rachel was sort of pointing out, people want to contribute in many and varied ways, and we all know that age is a terrible proxy for anything, really, you know, in terms of actually trying to, you know, we know that, you know, people later life represent a whole range of different people with different talents and skills and experiences. So yes, I think these ideas, I suppose, can sound quite neat, can't they? And I sort of admire the ambition to sort of scale up, you know, people's volunteering. But I think we would you know, I think the sort of findings of the review probably do echo some of your thoughts there, Sharon.
Yes, I would second that completely. And also that retirement isn't really a significant trigger for volunteering, the evidence tells us. So if people have been volunteering prior to retirement, then they are more likely to carry on retiring. So it's sort of helping people to develop a culture and expectation of volunteering or contributing to their communities throughout their life. So a sort of life course approach rather than a flagship scheme when they retire. So yeah, we would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we might have another question that's come in. Rachel, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. And this is very exciting because it's from Nigeria, and I don't think the Centre for Ageing Better is used to having questions.
We're going global. We're going global.
So, yeah, thank you very much, Olimide Dada. And the question is, what is the best modality for recruiting older volunteers?
That is yeah. I mean, I suppose as it reflects the discussion that we've had previously, isn't it? That I'm not sure. I mean, that would be the holy grail, wouldn't it? That I'm not sure that exists, because, as I say, the sort of diversity of experience and the routes in which people come into volunteering or making a contribution. I'm not sure that I certainly think in the review. The idea, yeah, I think that lots of the messages were about actually how diverse this group of people are, and actually that means how diverse you need to be in terms of the opportunities. I mean, I think we had the discussion earlier, didn't we, about the kind of online opportunities to recruit, and also I think, you know, one of the things I suppose that we're very interested in promoting is almost, I think, this idea that you widen the pool of volunteers in order to be able to represent the community in which you live. And so the idea that you are, you know, that another volunteer is someone that looks like me or feels like me, I think is a very powerful one in terms of people being able to relate to somebody. Because one of the other things that we found, I suppose, through the review, and I think other workers found, that sometimes even just the idea of volunteering or the term volunteering can be a bit off-putting to people who worry about being what's the commitment, or that's not a thing that I could do. So again, I think some ways of being creative about what you're asking people to do and the ways in which you're asking people to do it, to make it almost sound a bit less like volunteering at times, might also be part of a strategy to widen the pool of people that you that get involved in what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, Claire, because that's something that with the grantees we've been talking about very recently, the language that we use around volunteering, and absolutely it can be either intimidating, off-putting, going back to all of the principles that we talked about. You know, people fear overcommitment. They think that volunteering is something that they're going to be expected to do on a long-term or regular basis. So, there's ways that you can frame what you're asking people to do in terms of giving time, helping someone out, providing support. Another way that sometimes people talk about it is giving back, which is an interesting phrase. I wonder what any people who are online might think about that phrase. It's can be a bit of a loaded value laden word as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We're due to end at 11:15, so I was saying there might be time for any quick questions that people have. Otherwise, I think it might be worth just kind of again just summarising and reminding people that we do have our age-friendly and inclusive volunteering kind of guide booklet out. So please do look.
So yes, Claire was saying we've got lots of resources for you to look at, to peruse online. We've got our review that Claire gave a summary of, and we've also got our new guide, which is short and sharp, just out on the website as well. We've got some. We've got the outlines by the panelists on our YouTube channel, and we've also got some other videos that you can see around volunteering, around contributing, and around all sorts of other things as well. So we'll send you all those links in a follow-up email, and if you've got any more comments, please do get in touch and we will be able to share that with you on the website.